Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Whiteboard Wednesday from Advocates for Human Potential. Each Whiteboard Wednesday, we take a quick look at issues affecting public health and human services organizations and give you real world solutions for real world problems. I'm Kristen King, and I'm the lead for online events and digital strategy here at AHP, which includes everything from live social media events like this one to webinars to virtual classrooms to massive online conferences and more. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Linda Frazier. Linda is AHP's Director of Addiction Initiatives and one of our senior program managers. And I'm going to bring Linda on the screen with me now. Hi, Linda.
Hey, Kristen.
Hello. Linda has spent her entire career in public health and behavioral health with a huge focus on quality and process improvement. Linda has been a nurse for over 30 years and is the immediate past chair of the American Public Health Association Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs section. I could go on, but suffice it to say, we were in good hands with Linda. So, Linda, today we're talking about teamwork and continuous quality improvement.
Yep, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, me too.
Too excited. I'm running ahead of myself.
Well, and you had quite a day today. You had no power and internet this morning, so we're recording this later than we planned. So you can say topics if you want. And with this topic, there's so much we can cover that I'm going to suggest we just laser focus for today on leadership and how leadership drives teamwork and continuous quality improvement for ACO behavioral health services integration. And because that is such a mouthful, I'm going to just say CQI from here on out, I think.
Terrific. Yes, leadership is critical to setting the stage for effective CQI work in organizations of any size. So it's a good place to start.
Awesome. And, I love to put these things into context with a story that just gives us a setting where this actually applies, right? So it's not hypothetical. So you have a lot of experience with supporting ACOs to implement CQI programs, especially in the context of integration. And I know you recently did this with a big ACO in the Mid-Atlantic. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. That project was one where they brought AHP in to integrate behavioral health services into their primary care system across their network. So all their clinics, adult and pediatric, and including their satellite locations. It was a big network of care, so it was a big project.
Yeah, it sounds pretty big. And I know that you like to kind of, cut things into doable pieces. So I'm sure that you started with some pilot sites so you would have some data to work with. And so, tell us a little bit about like what was the strategy there?
Sure. We absolutely did do that. Starting small allows you to capture baseline data and metrics and test out approaches on a more limited scale before you throw everything in to the same bucket. So it gave us starting data so we could evaluate what was working and what wasn't, who needed to be part of the effort, what the roles were that were essential, what the different elements were of the effort, and to discern which of those things made a difference in our metrics and gave us better outcomes. It also gave us a model for how you could spread this and sustain it across multiple teams in such a large network. So you sort of get to test things out before you put all the effort into telling everybody, hey, here's how we're going to do business out. Oops, we missed something. We have to change it. It just gives you a more solid way to launch it system-wide.
Yeah, and that, of course, is the goal of CQI. Like, we do the thing, we check to see if it's working, and what's not working, repeat until we're sure what the process is. That way we can keep our gains and we can keep getting a little bit better as we go. Is that a fair definition?
It is. Change is always an iterative process. Whether you're practicing piano using your 10 fingers or improving clinical outcomes. Pilot testing in places where you have a great team and great resources leads to early wins. And success breeds success. Other teams want to get on board when they see really great things happening, or they see a team who's really excited and feeling like their patients are being served and doing well.
Absolutely. And so now we have some context for kind of what this engagement was here. I want to shift to focusing on the role that leadership actually had in facilitating the teamwork that made the integration and CQI possible here. And before we dive in, I just want to remind the folks who are watching that this is a real time conversation. So if you're watching live, please join in. You can leave comments, you can give us reacts to let us know that you're here. You can ask questions. If you're watching the replay, you can also leave comments and give reacts, and we'll reply in that comment section. So you may notice me kind of looking off to the side from time to time. I'm just checking to see what's going on. So I'll bring any of those pieces into the conversation if they're not already covered. And if you prefer to be anonymous and not have your name attached to your question, you can also just send a private message to the page, and I'll be happy to bring that onto the screen and just not say your name. It's no problem. So Linda, we've got integration, we've got continuous quality improvement, CQI. All of these pieces depend on teamwork, right? And if we want our initiatives to take root and we want our teams to flourish, we have to create a culture where that's possible. So how does leadership, and how did leadership in this situation create the condition where teamwork worked well and that they could really undertake this CQI effort within their ecosystem?
Well, for this ACO, the executive leadership really got it and championed the project by appointing a team that they tasked with rolling out the project and provided that team with the necessary resources. And that was really the first move. They championed integrating behavioral health as a priority, and they invested in that priority. And they made it clear that they would respond to the needs of the team they tasked to do the work.
Yeah, well, and that investment piece is really key. You can't just say to a team, like, go do the thing, you figure it out. They need resources. They need to have that backing and to have access to the tools and the resources that are required for them to be successful and to actually make progress.
Absolutely, and this executive team is a really good example of knowing that, seeing it, and they selected their rollout team carefully, and they gave them the time they needed to do the work, and they invested in what it took to make that time really effective. So they brought in us to do technical assistance and support, and when they found gaps or felt that they needed to hire to address gaps and barriers based on the metrics, then that they did that. They were willing to do that.
Yeah, so they didn't just say it was a priority, they actually invested in it as a priority. And then how did they execute on this?
Well, as I mentioned, they appointed a team tasked with rolling it out, and that rollout team included behavioral health staff and leadership. It included operations folks and leadership. And all of those folks that were included in that rollout team had credibility and influence in the organization. So they sort of handpicked strategically a team they knew could roll this out and build momentum, rather than hiring somebody and say go forth and do before they have any credibility within the organization. It makes it a more strategic approach.
Yeah, well, and so then you have the executive team that says, this is the priority, but then that actual rollout and implementation team is really the next layer of leadership.
Yeah, it is. And that rollout team worked together they came together from different perspectives, different satellite clinics, different disciplines, and they brought with them the capacity to solicit input from all aspects and parts of the organization. And that really showed the staff and reinforced what executive leadership meant what they said, right? That staff ideas and input were important and valuable to the organization. The rollout team could leverage that input and be sensitive to the needs of different sites and service teams as they thought about this bigger picture rollout to all parts of the ACO. They were able to identify system-wide training and professional development priorities. They were able to identify supports, what was needed to support integration efforts, and as well as what challenges and barriers were and what the opportunities were to smooth those over or to address those in order for things to move forward.
What I really like about this is that they got input from a lot of different areas. Like you said, it wasn't just like some person who's appointed from outside the organization, but they really pulled that from a lot of different perspectives, different locations, different service settings, different service areas, adult and pediatric. So they had all this information. What did they do with that input that they had gathered?
Well, I think the key here, and it comes through in the story, but to emphasize it, the executive leadership selected a rollout team because of their expertise and their influence. So these are people that others in the organization trust, they'll talk to, and trust that their input is being listened to. And then they empowered the rollout team to, based on that and what they heard in the organization, to identify the changes necessary to improve outcomes and succeed. And the rollout team was able to pick a pilot site to test adjustments. They picked a pilot site where they had good goodwill and good capacity. So they weren't trying to, they picked a team that had the capacity to do this as a pilot. And they came in with baseline metrics and a mandate, but also the ability to continue to collect and use those metrics to measure whether things were working and to correct course. And that becomes really important. And as you do that, the input and buy-in from staff generates ideas and solutions, but it also lays the groundwork for, we have the metrics, and if we don't see improvement, then we're not going to spend a lot of time investing in something that doesn't really keep those outcomes at the front and center.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense because so there's a couple things going on here, right? We get invested in ideas and changes when we're actually part of creating them, right? And they have an impact that we can actually see on our life. And we get invested in them when we see how they fit into the larger picture. And so we're not, doing this in isolation. And that really came from the decisions that the leadership team and also the rollout team made in structuring this and really creating a space where that was effective. So with that in mind, how, draw a straight line for me, how did this tie directly into their CQI efforts?
So the importance of data is key here. So leadership tracked data on referrals to outside specialty care. They were concerned that consumers weren't getting enough integrated service with primary care, and that, because some of those referrals weren't happening, and that meant people were lost to service or continued to struggle. So they championed the need to collect and track the data. They acknowledged that this could be challenging. They were transparent about that and communicating what the data was, whether the team was making progress. They supported continuing to collect the data and make the decisions based on the data, not forcing, this idea is one we think should work. You have to stick with it, whether the data tells you it's working or not. And they championed making sure they met the CQI team's need for resources. So they were willing to hire staff if they needed to hire staff. If you could show them the data and you could show them what was happening and what made a difference, then they were willing to invest.
Well, and this is really important because if we're truly committed to achieving the triple aim where we're improving the overall patient care experience, we have better medical outcomes. We're on a roll today. We got top bricks and better medical outcomes and lower overall healthcare costs, across the population that we're serving. We can't just throw stuff out there and hope it works. We can't just wish that it works. We want to actually know. And the data and being able to make decisions based on the data is the strategy, right? That's how integration succeeds. And that's how we get the outcomes where we want them.
Exactly. And it's continuous quality improvement because you continue to monitor the data and it lets you know if you need to check something out.
Yeah. Well, that's really important too, because the makeup of your community might change. There may be other things going on. So what worked 15 years ago may not work now, But when we're tracking data over time and we're really involving our team and asking those questions, we're empowered to do that on an ongoing basis. It's not just like a one and done and you're stuck with it forever.
Right.
So, Linda, you created a great resource to support ACOs in managing CQI through teamwork. I'm going to pull that up on the screen. Will you tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. I developed a checklist of CQI teamwork fundamentals that ACOs can use to strengthen their work, specifically in behavioral health. So the checklist looks at this with behavioral health in mind, and it breaks teamwork down into 3 areas: leadership, which we're talking about today, diversity of perspective and specialty, and accountability. And we've talked about all of that today, but we've focused on leadership because you're right. If we're going to achieve the triple aim, we need a rigorous approach that's driven by a framework that translates CQI to behavioral health and social services, or can help integration efforts with primary care, and it helps you build something that's sustainable, right? Not a one-off. You're not going to achieve the triple aim with one-off efforts.
Well, so folks, I'm going to drop the link to this checklist in the comments. It's a super useful tool. Like Linda said, it's organized into these 3 areas, and you can just go right down the list and see where you are. So if you're just getting started with your CQI program, it's a great jumping off point. If you're already midstream, you could use it as a reboot or a reset, or just reinforcement to keep you moving in the right direction. And so I'm going to drop that in the comments. I'm also going to put it in the description on this video. That's a free tool, so go ahead and grab that. So Linda, let's go back to the story that we started in the beginning.
Okay.
We had this executive leadership team that really made CQI a priority in the organization, and it carried through the whole approach. So where are they now in this process? What happened?
It's a great story because they've been able to expand and build upon their centralized behavioral health team in order to support the primary care sites across their network of services. They created and expanded primary care teams to embed behavioral health staff that are incorporated in those primary care sites and services. They created an onboarding orientation and training for use across the organization. So the message is, if you join us and you're going to work with us, this is the way we do business. We integrate behavioral health, and this is how. And they also, develop some training modules to do professional development with staff working on those teams, both for primary care staff and for behavioral health staff. So that fundamentals checklist elaborates on the key components and these leadership issues that we've been discussing. And I think this team really represented those 3 components: not only leadership, but how do you include diverse perspectives and specialties and represent that so that you bring your care and client experience up a level. And then that issue of accountability, which really is driven by data for high functioning CQI teams.
So Linda, if I am an ACO and I'm considering a continuous quality improvement program as part of my integration strategy, bottom line this for me, what should be my takeaway from this conversation?
Good question. I think the takeaway is that CQI is a team sport. It's like the piano analogy I shared earlier. You need all 10 fingers to play the piano. And if one of them is broken or they're not all working together well, you have to make up, the others have to make up for it, right? Or you have to practice more and get more skilled. And you may be able to work with a broken finger and play, but it probably isn't going to work as well as you had the whole team working together. CQI really helps teams hone and build morale and make data-driven decisions and build capacity. So if there is a weak link in the system, they can adapt and continue to operate and function, but your data continues to tell you if somehow you've lost a component that's really key to success and to high quality care for patients.
Yeah. Well, and I really like this music analogy because you were describing, the professional development and the documentation that this program put together and how all these pieces were working. And I think of that as sort of like the sheet music, right? Like we all know what parts we're playing. And if parts are missing, can you get through the song? Sure, but there's a gap there. And it takes a lot of practice to know how to improvise and be comfortable dealing as, someone comes in early, someone, misses a measure, whatever. I really think that is just such a great analogy for this conversation because it takes all the fingers on the piano, it takes all the instruments in the orchestra, and these other structures that we put around it are what allow those things to really sing together.
It's a beautiful analogy because it also tells you, what's an orchestra without a conductor, without an executive champion that knows what he wants and can communicate and can let each component of the orchestra play to their strength, right?
Well, and it's also nice too, and I think I'll make this our closing thought on the music analogy here. But but music and like orchestral music, there's science and there's art, right? So once we have the sheet music, once we have the science, then we can decide like, oh, I'm going to play this a little harder because that's going to serve the story I'm telling. I can shift my focus in this area, or I can speed it up or slow it down. Because once we have the data and we know kind of what the baseline is, then we can do infinite things with it. And we can always know if they're working because we go back to the data.
Excellent.
Awesome. Linda, thank you so much. It was so much fun spending time with you in this short conversation. Folks, again, please check out Linda's checklist for continuous quality improvement of behavioral health services. It's available free through our website. I will give you that link again. Linda, thank you so much. Folks, we are just so glad that you join us here for our Whiteboard Wednesdays. I do want to thank you again for joining us live. If you're watching on the replay, drop those questions in the comments and we will get back with you. Linda, thank you a final time. We made beautiful music together today. Folks, I'm Kristen King on behalf of my colleagues at Advocates for Human Potential and my online events team. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for Whiteboard Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.